Drop it on the random.
What does joining Hip Hop Now's Patreon mean? It means supporting the kind of hip hop content that keeps you updated on the latest hip hop news and moves. It means supporting the production of content like That Time in Hip Hop and Hip Hop Now Reviews. It means you care about the conversation and preservation of hip hop music and culture. Hip Hop Now Patreon supporters get exclusive access to bonus content, merchandise, and more. Support the movement. Become a supporter of Hip Hop Now podcast today at patreon.com/Hip Hop Now.
Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now podcast, Scarface has the coronavirus. Dr. Dre's The Chronic is inducted into the Library of Congress. And D-Nice shows you how to do this. And then every DJ does it. And they still doing it. Please stop. Like, for real, stop.
Let's get right to business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic album.
Come to Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Returning listeners, I hope you're safe. I hope you're healthy out there. Appreciate you taking the time out from your quarantine to listen to me. New listeners, I'm glad you discovered me. Hopefully I keep you around. Hopefully you can go through the 300 plus episodes of content I have right here on this stream of Hip Hop Now podcast. Now I know you're saying to yourself, wow, 300 and something episodes. But let me put y'all on. This here podcast, Hip Hop Now podcast, is the original podcast. And this podcast itself is about to hit 200 episodes. So, like I did when I hit the 100th episode, I'm going to do a 200th episode. And what I want to do for the 200th episode is answer your questions. Now, I know I did something similar to this, but this was more so, everything. And I mean, I honestly could be everything again, but I want to know what your hip hop questions are. How you feel about something, and how you think I may feel about it. Who's the greatest of all time? What's the greatest rap record of all time? Some of my favorites. Whatever your questions are as they relate to hip hop, start sending them to me. You can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. That's on Instagram and Twitter. You could DM me. You could tag me, whatever the case may be. Obviously, I'm going to put this up so people can put their questions in the threads. But I want to know from you, the listener, yes, you, even you new listeners, some of your hip hop questions. Doesn't matter if you're a brand new hip hop fan or you're younger or you from the old school, you straight out the 80s with your, yes, y'all, and you don't stop. Hip hop now, pot. Okay, I'll stop. But you get what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? I want your questions for the 200th episode. So I'm going to keep pushing this so y'all can get down. Also, please know, I know you heard it in the beginning of the show, it's not a game. In 2020, we are trying to push this podcast a little bit forward, you know what I'm saying, in production quality, maybe bring some video content, but I have to know that people are committed. Now, a lot of people listen, so don't get me wrong, I am truly appreciative of that, but only way this podcast can continue to grow and continue on in general is with your support. So you can visit patreon.com/hiphopnow. Check out the tiers there. You could be a one-time supporter or a monthly supporter at whichever level makes you comfortable. Obviously, you don't have to donate anything to this podcast. You'll still be able to enjoy it on every platform because that's where we at. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com, allhiphop.com, djbooth.net, and a couple of places where I'm getting some of these stories from. Conway the Machine released a new single produced by Alchemist, featuring Schoolboy Q. It's called Shoot Sideways. And if you're a Griselda fan, yes, it's everything it sounds like. Conway doing what he do, Alchemist doing what he does on the beat, and Schoolboy Q just bringing in a whole nother flavor that I'm really feeling on the single. Alchemist and Conway the Machine actually have a project coming up. Now, this still isn't Conway's debut album that we've been waiting for on Shady Records, but on March 30th, if you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. But on March 30th, they're going to be dropping a joint project called Lulu. I believe it's more like an EP, maybe like 7 songs. Cormega's also on here, so believe it. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, but you don't know. Now, if you've been stuck in the house like most of us, you know what I'm saying, and big shout out to those people who have to be out because they work jobs that are essential. You may have heard about D-Nice, DJ D-Nice to some of y'all, D-Nice of the BDP era, D-Nice of Just Call Me D-Nice, D-Nice of Self-Destruction with the long leather coat walking up the steps with the cool verse. You know that D-Nice, right? So he did a live Instagram like DJ party. And I think originally, you know, obviously some people who follow him was in there and was listening and watching. But I think it ballooned to like 100K people watching and jamming out to DJ D-Nice mixing like a bunch of, you know, like old school records and dope tracks. But I think what the attraction was the fact that it wasn't just, you know, just a bunch of random people here to listen to D-Nice mix. It was also a lot of celebrities chiming in, and D-Nice was like, you know, a celebrity would chime in or whatever, and or even on their Instagram jamming to what he doing, and you know, he would start playing their record. You know what I'm saying? If it's Snoop saying something about what D-Nice is doing, then he plays a Snoop record. You know what I'm saying? So it was pretty dope, creative. The timing was perfect for how people were feeling with, you know, being sheltered in place, you know, trying not to get sick. But then it got a little out of hand, right? Because it was very dope. A lot of people was on it. D-Nice was doing his thing. And it was like he kind of, you know, brought back a little notoriety to the DJ. You know what I'm saying? We always talking about the rappers in hip hop, but those that know the origins of hip hop knows it started with the DJ. I mean, when you talk about like pioneers, you know what I'm saying? Like Kool Herc, you know, he's a DJ. You know what I'm saying? This is what I'm talking about. So it was dope in that sense, but I think I expected other DJs to want to do sets, which was fine. I mean, there's some people who are at home who aren't working from home or may have been furloughed, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever the case may be, and enjoy this. So to have like, you know, somebody like a DJ Premier or another DJ say, hey, I'm going live here, people just felt like, oh man, well, I get to enjoy all these different, you know, like these parties, virtual parties. But then you just started getting more and more and more. And look, I'm not hating. I'm just saying, chill. You know what I'm saying? Just a little bit chill. Like, because going live and DJing, a couple of DJs have been doing that. A couple of producers produce beats live. You know, rappers make songs. Like a lot of people do this already. It was just D-Nice had perfect timing. He had the right cachet to have, you know, celebrities involved. Because obviously, you know, if he was an unknown DJ, it'd probably be a bigger story because he'd probably, you know, get some serious business. But this is DJ D-Nice, who has a history. in the rap game and in relationship with a lot of, well-known hip hop artists and celebrities and stuff like that from DJing. So it was dope, but I'm not trying to tell DJs not to do it. I'm just saying the moment has passed. Do not get upset if you hit us with the notification and we don't all come in there. You know what I'm saying? We don't all flood in your live and joint and give you that same energy, because I think it was a moment and everybody was doing it, you know what I'm saying? And it felt like we were all together, and I think that's what made it dope. You know what I'm saying? Because you felt like everybody you knew was watching it, jamming to it, tweeting about it, posting about it, whatever the case may be. So it was a dope moment, definitely a memorable moment. That's why I'm spending so much time on it for hip hop for 2020, because, given the circumstances of this, virus that's going around and us not, knowing what's going to be what, it was nice to have that. Nice bars. But on a related and probably a more somber note, Scarface of the Ghetto Boys and Scarface the Soloist, one of the greatest hip hop legends of all time in hip hop, is sick. And he says he has the coronavirus. Now, apparently he mentioned this or said this to Willie D, who was also in the Ghetto Boys. But the thing that makes it scary, because let me just clear the air. I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving people advice. I'm just somebody who works in media and also follows the news to kind of flush out what may be true, what's not. And again, I'm not an expert, but it could be bad. It's usually worse for people who have conditions, you know what I'm saying? A weak immune system, older, but that doesn't mean that someone younger can't, get so sick that they pass away. So I think a lot of people, when they saw like, oh man, Scarface has it, I think initially I didn't feel some kind of way about it, only because I figured, okay, well, he's going to go probably get some help and blah, blah, blah. He's already been tested. But then when I saw like how he was having kidney problems and stuff like that, this was prior to even being diagnosed. That's when I started to feel some kind of way about it, because, of the whole, people with weaker immune systems and pre-existing health issues struggling to fight a virus off like this. So Scarface is still here. He ain't gone. So y'all need to pump your brakes a little bit. But definitely prayers up for Scarface. Again, a legend in the game. And if you want to know about a moment in hip hop regarding Scarface, just a snapshot of this man's legacy, me and the homie Tony of IntoTheDome.com, we have our other podcast, That Time in Hip Hop, and we did an episode on Scarface's third solo album, The Diary. Quite possibly his best. I know it's debatable, but definitely we talked about That Time in Hip Hop, that specific album, and what it meant to hip hop at that time and to this day, and Scarface as a whole. So check that out. That's on YouTube. The link is obviously in the description, as always. That Time in Hip Hop, though. Not to be on a somber note, but March 26th is the anniversary of the death of legendary hip hop artist and just mogul, one of the first hip hop moguls, black that is, Eazy-E. He passed away 25 years ago on March 26th, 1995. I remember when Easy passed, man. It was one of those things for me, similar to when Scott LaRock, I'm showing my age, but similar to when Scott LaRock passed away, because hip hop was so new that you didn't expect anybody, let alone anybody you looked up to as an artist, to die of anything, which seems stupid, but it's the truth, So when Scott LaRock died, it was shocking. But people got to remember when AIDS was rampant, there was a lot of fear, you know what I'm saying? And when Eazy-E was said to have AIDS, it almost seemed unbelievable, because it's one thing if, you heard somebody who has it, or somebody's such and such who has it, and it's not really a reality if you keep hearing it outside of your circumference. But if you're a big fan of NWA and in particular Eazy-E, and now you like he got AIDS, and back then, if you had AIDS, that just meant death sentence, like instantly. It was like nobody who got AIDS, let alone HIV, or HIV positive or whatever, you usually heard that they passed away not too long after that. It was that serious. Like Magic Johnson was literally the only one I could point to where I felt like he's the only one I know that was HIV positive and didn't pass away. So it was a tragic moment for hip hop. It came at a time, unfortunately, where 1995 was really like a turning point in hip hop, because the West Coast was still strong, but now the East Coast was starting to, come on, and you had the Wu-Tangs and the Biggies and the Nas, and like the game was changing. So to have somebody like Eazy die when, like, sure, in the late 80s was NWA's time, but Eazy-E was still doing his thing. I mean, he had just put Bone Thugs and Harmony out to the world. You know what I'm saying? If you didn't know that, we also have an episode on Bone Thugs and Harmony. But let alone just a trendsetter, one of the trendsetters in hip hop, definitely as it relates to West Coast hip hop. So rest in peace to the legendary Eazy-E. Now let's get on to some other news, because geez, we're getting kind of morbid. But Jeezy dropped a surprise album called 2020 Pyrex Vision. That is also about 7 songs. So don't ask me what's up with the 7 songs. I didn't get a chance to listen to it. Obviously, I'm not giving albums the gym test, because who's going to the gym? I'm not going to the gym. But nevertheless, I am still checking out music. So we'll see what's up. I'm not sure if I would review that one. It depends. And again, for those who came along and are new to this podcast, and maybe you are new to this podcast, or for the strength that you heard one of my reviews, which is something separate from the podcast now that I do, separate from this podcast. But again, remember, I'm really only trying to review albums that have a lot of discussion behind them. Some of these albums, like as far as discussing it online, and not just me, but just forums, timeline, whatever, I try to stick to those that are big, that are the talk of the town. So I did Eminem's, what was the name of it? Music by Murder, Murder by Music, one of them joints. You know what I'm talking about, the new album. And then I also reviewed Jadakiss's new album, Ignatius. Yes, I know how to say it now. And the last album I reviewed was Jay Electronica's new album, featuring Jay-Z. You definitely want to check that out. It's called A Written Testimony. I also appeared on the homie Kills podcast, Apartment 5B podcast. It was a joint podcast between That Time in Hip Hop and Apartment 5B, and we basically reviewed the album. And though I'm one of the people who liked the album for what it was, we all kind of agreed that there was just something left to be desired for a dude that was supposed to drop an album probably 10 years ago, which is crazy when you hear that being said. Like, that's unheard of that anybody would care that he has a new album coming out if it was supposed to come out damn near 10 years ago. Speaking of someone who hasn't had an album in a while, but he gets a pass because he done been locked up and in rehab and all kinds of stuff, is DMX. DMX confirmed that he is working on a new album. Now, I'm not even going to try to be a smart ass here, but I think I think I could have guessed that, to be honest. Remember, so many times DMX was like free from prison or out of rehab, and I know he was working with Swiss a lot, and they wound up putting a mixtape out, I want to say, man, maybe 4 years ago, if not more. And some of the music was good, and I was actually anticipating it because I don't know what it is about DMX, right? I feel like with DMX, he was really hot in the beginning, like released 2 albums in the same year, and then had a 3rd album, I believe, the following year. And I think when around the time of the 3rd album, put it this way, his first 4 albums is his run, with that 4th album being his career almost feeling like it was over as far as the height, not necessarily over in general, but just the height of his career. Even though he still had like a hit record or 2 on that album, but you know, those first 2-3 albums, he had a lot of joints on those albums that was hot. And then I felt like he kind of lost it somewhere. And I don't know if it's lost it in the sense of everything that was going on with him and not really focusing on the music, or hip hop moving on, and me hearing a new DMX record a couple of years ago just wasn't hitting the same way. You know what I'm saying? It was a little bit different. But then when he did some of those songs with Swiss Beatz, and I heard him on another track, I can't remember what it was. It was something on my Instagram. He was featured on the joint. And I was like, man, DMX sound good on this record. Like, he sounded dope. And you know what I think it is? I just think it's the break, the hiatus. Because the thing about DMX, when he came out, the attraction was there wasn't anything like him. Like, there was nothing like him on the radio. Other artists you could point to, sure, he had a bald head, had his shirt off, but he wasn't Tupac. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't sound like Tupac. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that evoked some imagery that reminded you of Tupac, but that's kind of where it began and ended, at least for me. So you didn't really have anybody or anything like DMX. So even when he did features, he kind of stood out. Like when you listen to Money, Power, and Respect, like, you know, that song is cool. But when DMX verse come, man, it's like this beat was made for him. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of feel like it's the same thing now. Like, what do we have that's like a DMX? Like, nothing. You know what I'm saying? And what I do like is he seems to get a lot of love, and it's not just from, you know, like older cats who were, you know, buying all his records and going to see him perform back in the days. It's just a lot of people who not only like his music, but maybe you was a kid when he was in movies. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you was a kid when you saw Belly. You know what I'm saying? Or any of the other movies he was in, and his music. Maybe you kind of literally grew up with DMX. Because, see, I didn't grow up with DMX. You know, DMX music came out when I was in college. You know what I'm saying? So I didn't really, I wasn't a kid who, you know, was listening to this in my room and like, oh, this is the first time I'm hearing about drugs. Well, not in my neighborhood, but you know what I mean. So I think he just has an appeal, you know what I'm saying, that's really unmatched, and it's just kind of dope just to know that, you know, he has music coming out and that somebody's even reporting on it. How about that? That to me, that's dope in itself. Speaking of 25th anniversaries, Old Dirty Bastard's debut album, Return to the 36 Chambers, came out with a deluxe edition for the 25th anniversary, and it's a 43-track release on digital platforms. Now, I didn't listen to this at all. I knew the anniversary came out. I didn't pull the album out and listen to it. Sometimes I do that. But let's see. Yeah, man, there's 43 records on here. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, I got that album. There's only 14 songs on there. What the hell is the rest? Well, there's a lot of whoa, this is kind of dope. There's a lot of like unreleased joints that were like side joints that wound up on mixtapes. There's also different versions of like records on here. Like Shimmy Shimmy Y'all has about like 5 versions of Shimmy Shimmy Y'all. There's also instrumentals to like every record on here. Wow, acapellas and everything. This is really old school. So if you love that album and you love ODB and you just want a collector's item, you know what I'm saying, then this ain't a commercial, but Return to the 36 Chambers, the dirty version. Go out and get that. Or it's on streaming platforms. Check that out. Now, speaking of new music that was released, Run the Jewels released a new single called Ooh La La, which samples Gangstar's 1994 single The Wick. Greg Nice saying that part on the record. And the record is cool. But y'all know in 2020, we're supposed to get a Run the Jewels album. Yes, a whole album. And I remember this, or this, like Stephen A. Smith be saying, it drives me nuts. I just remember seeing on my Instagram a while back that Run the Jewels 4, their album, was definitely coming this year. Now, I did see recently, I think LP posted it, or Big Mike, one of them posted it, saying that they have no idea when the album's coming out, but here's a single. So I think the album was probably scheduled to come out soon. Maybe they're on schedule and this single's out now, but maybe they're not putting the album out right away, which would be odd to me. Well, I won't say odd because, I mean, considering what's going on, I'm pretty sure they want to start doing shows ASAP once they release music, because it's kind of a gift and a curse situation that we got going on now. When you think about music in general, there's a lot of hip hop still being released. You can't really tour that music. You can't really do shows right now, dropping something new. But at the same time, if your money right, if your paperwork right, on streaming services, there's just a lot of people, looking at everything on social media. Like, there's just more eyes and ears on everything content. So it's like a perfect time to put stuff out, maybe get it to trend, get some buzz going online, so that you just get more ears on it. Maybe you get some downloads and some sales that way. So, but show money is the thing that you really want. At the end of the day, that's the bread and butter for artists, because royalty checks are crazy. And lastly, if you don't know, Dr. Dre's 1992 undoubtable, don't even doubt it, classic album, don't try to revisionist history me, The Chronic, was inducted into the Library of Congress. This is on hiphopdx.com. Let's read some quotes about what we have here. On Wednesday, March 5th, the Library of Congress announced Dre's debut solo album, The Chronic, was inducted into their National Recording Register alongside albums from Selena, The Village People, Tina Turner, and Whitney Houston. The National Recording Registry is the evolving playlist of the American soundscape. You hear what I'm saying, man? The Chronic. This is what I'm at. The Chronic is a part of the playlist of the American soundscape. Librarian of Congress Carla Hayden said that, by the way. I just ad-libbed a little bit. It reflects moments in history captured through the voices and sounds of the time. We received over 800 nominations this year for culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant recordings to add to the registry. Wow, and The Chronic is one of them. Now, for those who don't understand the magnitude of what this means, right? Because we all could be like, yo, The Chronic is a classic. That's it for us, right? We done. We've already anointed it and we're done. But what this means, man, is after Dr. Dre and Snoop, me and you, we're long gone. In the Library of Congress will be a snapshot in time of 1992, and records like Bitches Ain't Shit are in the National Library of Congress. Did you hear what I just said? Those are those are just some of the names. These Nuts, the skit, is in the Library of Congress. Fuck with Dre Day is in the Library of Congress. The Day the Niggas Took Over is in the Library of Congress. This is what I'm talking about. Now, I know when you hear all of that, and especially if you're a little squeamish with hip hop, and it's a family podcast, so of course I cleaned it up. But that says to me, as a hip hop fan and as a person who loves to debate people when it comes to hip hop, that it's not necessarily about what's being said, right? It's about reality. This music reflected someone's reality. Those song titles I mentioned reflected someone's reality. The phrases, how they refer to each other, talking about the riots back then, you know, the Rodney King beating, the beef with Tim Dog and Eazy-E and Ice Cube, even though it was kind of squashed around the time this album came out also. Snoop Dogg's like debut, so to speak. This is before his debut album, but he's heavily featured on this album. Somebody who's never seen any of them, including us, alive, will look at the Library of Congress and see The Chronic, Dr. Dre, and we'll just know like, wow, this is 1992 hip hop, gangster rap from the West Coast. Dr. Dre, one of the, you know, hopefully they know, one of the greatest producers of all time, and not just be like, oh, Beats by Dre. I remember those headphones. Well, maybe they won't remember them because they're from the future, but whatever. These are the types of things as hip hop fans we have to celebrate. We can't just be in our it's a classic bag. We got to look at the magnitude, because the number one thing is, you know, Joe Schmo, DJ Cat shirt wearing, you know, that dude on Twitter or Instagram who makes his declaration of what albums are classics. Nobody will even remember you as it relates to music once you're gone. This is a way we preserve hip hop. We preserve it ourselves, don't get me wrong, by saying what albums are classics and our favorites and stuff like that. But this is how you really preserve the culture. And I just hope it happens more with more albums that are cornerstones in hip hop music and culture history, as opposed to popularity contests. Like, no offense, but I don't think Drake has an album that can be looked at as a tempo. He definitely has songs, because don't get it twisted. He definitely has songs. You might have to pick one, but he definitely has records. Fortunately for Meek, it might be back to back. But I think albums like The Chronic, like Illmatic, like Straight Outta Compton, like It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, these these Wu-Tang Clan, Into the 36 Chambers. These are like records that did something to the culture of hip hop, pop culture outside of that, and even society in a lot of ways, with the lyrics and the brashness and how direct hip hop artists were with what they had to say back then. So congratulations to Dr. Dre, the Chronic. Fortunately, I believe this album and everything else on Death Row is owned by a toy company, but I digress. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter, or both, at Vegas World INC. And please know that this podcast, Hip Hop Now Podcast, is available wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Just search. And if you're so kind, like this show, we'll hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, rate this podcast, and you can also become a supporter by visiting patreon.com/hiphopnow. Until next time, y'all, I am not a critic, I'm a fan. Peace. Drop it on the random.